Well, hello everybody. It seems that I'm all over the place here. One minute I'm doing upholstery and trim and filling with brakes, and now I'm going to have a go at truing up the wheels. This is a very tricky operation. I have done it on two wheels already, and it's been quite successful, but it's time consuming. These are the wheels that I've just had the tyres taken off. Pretty hard to get them off by myself. I don't have the equipment here to do it. So I've had the tyres stripped off. The wheels themselves are in pretty good condition. I've got a couple of good ones, as I say, which I've trued up. And what I'm doing now is to try and get one of these into some sort of sensible order. I don't know whether you can see that or not, but I've got my dial gauge on the edge of the wheel just there. And this is going to tell me the amount of lateral run out, which is the run out sort of this way. In other words, the way the wheel wobbles when it's turning, as opposed to radial run out, which is sort of when the wheel is a bit out of round. Now, my understanding is that the lateral run out is controlled by these longer spokes, and the radial run out is controlled by the shorter ones. The radial run out on this wheel is pretty good, but it has got a bit of a wobble in it, in other words a bit of lateral run out, and that's what I'm going to try and correct. So the first thing I will do is work out how much run out there is. Now, I've used a dial gauge for this, but you can just use a pointer and get a rough idea. I don't know that it's terribly critical as long as you get it down as low as possible. So what I'll do is, the pointer there is against the wheel, as you can see, and I'll turn the wheel as I go and you'll see the pointer move. Okay, there's 10 thou, 20 thou, 30 thou, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 thou, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, goes up to maybe 150 if we're being kind to ourselves, and then comes back to 0, which is the lowest spot in the wheel. So it would appear that there is about 150 thou lateral run out on this wheel, which is around about 4 millimeters probably, which is just over 1/8 of an inch. Now, I don't know what's really acceptable. I've tried to find out on the net what's acceptable, but I think 1/8 of an inch is probably a bit too much. So what I've got to try and do is tighten these spokes up and loosen the opposite ones off slightly so that the wheel will pull itself out this way. Not quite as simple as that. And the hardest thing, of course, is loosening the spokes, because they've probably been done up for 50 odd years, and the threads, if you've tried to loosen these, you'll know that the threads are very fine on them, and generally they won't move, and we have to heat them. So that's going to be the next step, is to take this wheel off and see how many. I'll mark the wheel on the low spot and the high spot, and we'll try and get the spokes loosened. I have got some spares here, so we'll see how we go with that, with some flame and a spoke spanner. And I'll mark the wheels first before I do that, so I know which areas to heat in. So I'm heating up one of the spokes. I've done one, and that's loosened off quite well. The idea is just to get them a little bit orange. Some people say you should quench them with a wet rag. Sometimes I've tried that. It doesn't seem to make a huge difference, but it might break loose some really rusty ones. A bit of footage here. You can see how that's going cherry red. Now, I've discovered that if I heat up the spoke a little bit and include the nipple there, it seems to be a little bit more successful. If you're using oxy, you obviously wouldn't want to get it so hot that it damages the spoke. But you can see there's quite a glow on that there. I'll give that one a go now and see how I'm also just going to heat underneath here a little bit, just to heat the end of the spoke. And we'll see how we go. I apologise for the wobbly camera. I'm trying to do several things at once here. So I'll put that on there now. I'm not going to try and tighten it, but rather loosen it. And that's worked really well. You can see that's loosened off quite nicely. So I've had 2 successes there, but I don't want to get too confident because there's quite a few more to go, and I'll work my way around the rim and see how many more I can loosen off. At the moment I'm only interested in the long spokes, not the short ones, because I just want to adjust the lateral run out. Well, there's the wheel with all the spokes replaced, and they're all pretty, they don't sound exactly the same, but they're all pretty bright. So there are no loose ones in there, which is good. Now I have to put it onto the car and try and true it up. So the idea is to get all those long spokes movable so they can all be adjusted, so that I can adjust the lateral run out and get it back to, I'm probably not going to get it perfect, but if I can get it back to 20, 30, 40 thou, I think I'll be pretty happy, because it's only about 1 millimetre or 32nd of an inch or so. So I'm going to aim for that. It's quite difficult. The spokes do come out, as you can see. I've broken quite a few of them, but they do come out, and they can be replaced. Clearly you wouldn't want to do this on a nice new shiny wheel, because you're really going to have it painted afterwards, and I'm going to get these sandblasted and paint them. So the next step is to put it on the car. Well, the wheel's fitted onto the car, and if you can see here, if I turn that, I get around about 40 thou. There it is, just under, there we go, around about 40 thou run out. It's not perfect, but I think if I try and get it perfect, it will drive me mental. 40 thou run out is actually pretty good. I think it's just over 1 millimetre. Which in turn I think is slightly over 1/32 of an inch. So although the wheel's not perfect, I think that's going to do me. It's very hard to get any definitive answer on what sort of lateral run out is permissible. Of course, no lateral run out is the best, but that's not going to happen with an old wheel. I also realise that a lot of people will be saying you need to buy new wheels. That's possible. I've never had any trouble with old wheels, as long as the spokes are tight and they're round. I've always found them very reliable, and I've never had anything break on me. So there we go, that's one wheel done, and I've got one more to do to get a set of nice 4, and a spare I've got here which I'll use, which is okay. So that's it. That's really good, I think.